Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's check it out.
Y'all.
Yeah, Mackenzie and Jess. Mackenzie was the one that said that she pees in the pool. And everyone was like, what? I don't think I reacted to that. She said she pees in the shower, which is, it's all going down the same drain. But in the pool? No. If it's your pool and no one else goes in your pool, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, the amount of dilution that will happen if it's a big enough pool. But if there are people in it and stuff, like, Now, there's probably, I think they've done studies that, especially a public pool, at any given time, there is a certain ratio of urine, and it's not a public, at least I don't think so. I don't think it's a health threat of any sort. It's just sort of icky to think about, But you could argue peeing in the shower is conserving water because you don't have to flush a toilet. Why? There's no reason why you would pee in the pool. There's a bathroom. Just walk over there. So that's all I know about Mackenzie. I think that's all that I have in my notes. Actually, I didn't even write that down. Pees in pool. So at least that's all I remember about her personality. That's quite a detail that the world will know about you.
Like everyone can hear.
Where is he? Babe, can you give me some white wine?
What you want, baby?
Just the white wine. Literally, my heart is still in my...
I feel like it's like,
No, literally, my heart is in my butt.
I know.
My heart is in my butt. There's so many phrases that I'm not familiar with in life among young people, but is that a Charlotte thing? Literally, my heart is in my butt. Well, it's bringing up too many weird things. I have to put some quotes. My heart is in my butt. My heart is in my butt is apparently, I think, in an episode of SpongeBob. Is that where it comes from? On Reddit, someone says, oh, well, it's just a cat with a heart on his butt, in the fur. It's a white cat with a black heart in the fur on the butt. So I am not seeing that. There's a tweet called "My Heart is in My Butt," and there's just some people. So maybe that's a very rare phrase. Anyway, I'm terrible with idioms, so I would be prone to saying something like that, right? Because you're supposed to say "my heart's in my throat" or something. But Laura was like, I know, which means that's a saying. It could be inside joke, whatever. It doesn't matter. Point is that how do I feel about that phrase? My heart is, I think I want to start using that with my wife. Oh my God, I'm so nervous. My heart is in my butt.
How are you?
Oh, we haven't spoken. Not wearing a ring. I still have it.
I did notice.
The ring meant a commitment to me that has since been broken.
Yeah.
So,
Do you still have it, or did he take it back?
no, I still have it. And
So if I were Jess, Chelsea, and Trevor, and Jimmy, if I were all four of them, or one of them, I would be like, this is silly. Let's all talk, the four of us, or let's rotate. Like if I were Jimmy, because it's so awkward, I would go to Chelsea and I would say, like, what do you think about, well, I don't think this would, if I were Jimmy, I would just go home, honestly. I go, Chelsea, I am terrified of what's going to happen to the two of us if I stay, because I don't know what I can and cannot do. But if that weren't the case, then if this was just some other scenario, you would hope that Chelsea would have a, not a private talk, but just a sidebar talk with Trevor, and just kind of have a conversation, have another closure chapter where Chelsea is like, hey, I'm with Jimmy now, and you're a lot bigger than I thought. And you're very attractive in person, and I'm sure you do well with the ladies, and it's great to see you, and I'd like to be friends or whatever. And then Trevor can respond however, and then the same between Jimmy and Jess, and then wrap it up, and then you can move on with the evening. But without having that conversation, it's ignoring the elephant in the room. And it also, in this scenario, it sets up Chelsea to spiral, honestly, because there's no scenario for Jimmy's behavior that, other than if Brandon was his name, Mary and Brandon on 90 Day Fiancé, other than like when Brandon went to church with Mary and Mary was like, don't turn your head. She literally was controlling where his head was moving at church because there were random just women in the crowd, public people at the church. So he was forced to keep his head oriented toward the front of the church during the sermon. And she was saying that. Now Mary is not doing that because she's a jerk face. She is deeply suffering, right? So the only way this would work, in my estimation, for Jimmy is that if best case scenario, he turns to Jess and says, I hate you, get out of my face, which would be awful. But Chelsea might be like, okay, well, that satisfies me. But if there's any kind of socializing or eye contact or what's perceived as eye contact or socializing, anyone would be triggered in that situation. And we have seen that in the absence of triggers, Chelsea will spin out. And so with this trigger, my goodness.
I'm not the type of person to just completely avoid being around you. Obviously, we dated a while, so it's a conversation that needs to be had, but...
Okay.
I will say he looks particularly like Christian McCaffrey's older brother with that hat on. Maybe not in that shot, but the other shot, there is a resemblance there.
I'd be lying if it isn't on my mind a lot. It needs to happen, I reckon.
Are you nervous?
Oh, so they're going away. I'm going to assume that he got Chelsea's permission or at least ran it past her. Otherwise, this is incredibly naive of him and setting himself up to be harmed and punished emotionally for a long time. But he doesn't seem that intoxicated at all, so I don't know. I'm going to assume that Chelsea is on board with this, but even if she were, I don't know. I'm just terrified. I think it's naive to believe that even if Chelsea was okay with it, that this would be the answer. But I don't know. Maybe it'll just be a little conversation, and maybe I'm selling Chelsea short. But given what happened, she was positive that he met up with with Jess when he left the house for an hour to be with his old friends from college. She knew that Jess was there and claimed that, it's like Jimmy is, I think, doing the right thing of just like, well, it's weird that, we have to have this conversation and I want to. But you just think he would think, well, we can have that conversation another time.
Well, that was the thing that you were like most afraid of.
Yeah.
Wait, well, we're about to get it, but he was saying, is he saying he's insecure about his family? Let's rewind that.
For the first time, I don't have any insecurities, and they're all out there, so...
Did she meet your family?
She did.
How was it? They adored her,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that was the easiest part of everything that we've done so far, meeting the family.
Well, that was the thing you were most afraid of. So she knew that. Did we know that? Did he talk about that? Both parents were previously married and their spouses had died. I don't remember anything like that. So they seem to be saying that was his biggest insecurity. So did we miss something? Or the family seemed lovely, but you never know. Is he ashamed of some other, I don't know, some demographic thing? Like, I don't know. But it's interesting.
What's the thing that you were like most afraid of?
Yeah.
That should tell you something. And you felt completely at peace with it?
Yeah, but it's like, how is that easy? And then we had our biggest fight.
So far, Jess is being very gracious and supportive of Chelsea, not talking shit, talking positively, encouraging the relationship. That's the high road. maybe this is her whole strategy, get him off guard, which she has said, which I totally understand, that she gets butterflies. Of course, she's legitimately on the show. That's why they do this. They go on the show, at least some of them go on the show legitimately and hand themselves over the process. They fall in love, and she fell in love. And it can be particularly hard when they break up with you, because it's just like, it's like all this, there's always this question hanging over you. You know, sometimes like if you go on 3 dates with someone and you're just sort of on the fence, and then they're like, yeah, I don't want a 4th date. And you're thinking, and suddenly you want that person even more, you know, hard to get. But also it's this question mark. You just never know. And then 5 years later, you know, they get a divorce and they call you up, or they, you know, DM you or something, and you're just like, oh, it's that person. You go on a 4th date, you're like, oh yeah, no. You just had no idea, because you just hadn't had it play itself through. So this is good, because then he can tell Chelsea, and this is being recorded, that he talked about how much he loved Chelsea and how much he. But if I were Jimmy, I would say, hey, you're being really nice, and, you know, thanks, and I just want to say I'm sorry, and I just want to be clear that I don't think you're too much, or, you know, I made my decision based on, I guess, kind of vibe. I didn't really know what to do. I really had feelings for both of you, and I'm happy with my choice because I'm with Chelsea. I'm not happy that I rejected you. It could have gone a different way. I don't know, and I'm just sorry. You know, something like that. So if I cause you any pain, it kills me that you would have felt bad, and you had every reason to be upset at me. And I'm sorry. I don't hold anything against you. Yeah, something like that.
It's been a roller coaster.
I want you to be good to her. Not me being the one giving you advice. This is like, you're like, please shut up.
Maybe Sarah was telling that to Jeremy. We don't know what happened in that car. Maybe she spent the whole time saying, Jeremy, you need to be better to Laura. You need to stop wearing Hawaiian shirts.
It's coming from like one of her good friends.
Are you an ex? I don't know. I get nervous around you. I told you I've never dated anybody that's even remotely like you, personality-wise.
And I suppose it would be rational for him to have some door that is ajar, given everything that's happening with Chelsea. I mean, if this timeline is right, soon before this, he was seriously wondering if it was over, right? So it would be normal to think, maybe it would be different with Jess, or maybe I want to be single. Whether he is conscious of it or not, I don't know.
I just felt really pressured with you. You were like basically saying, yeah, like, I'm right here. I'm telling you how I feel. What else do you need from me to make you get on a knee? And I'm like,
well, no, that's not what I said.
It's not great. It's hard to know exactly what he's trying to convey. I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's trying to, in his weird way, make her feel better. But in terms of what he's saying, he's blaming her. And at the time, I totally understood the beginning of that. And then the escalation was that he wasn't helping her out at all. And then eventually she gets upset. She didn't just get upset out of nowhere. Both her and Chelsea, at the beginning of their dates, were resistant to him wanting to just shoot the shit. He's like, can't we just talk about something casual, to both women? And both of them were like, well, no, because where do you stand? Because I think, it's the penultimate day. I think the next day it was like everyone had to make their choices, right? And so it was very, very important to them. Their life was on the line. And they didn't want to just be casual. Now, from his point of view, I think he wanted to be casual because he just wanted some more time, more experience to gather more data, essentially. But he doesn't really convey that well enough. Came across like he just wants to avoid, and he doesn't acknowledge what's really happening. And so, yeah, Jess. But anyway, it's not a good look. Now, maybe they edited something out, but either way, I wouldn't. Even if this was later, I don't think this is a good look, especially given how gracious Jess is being.
I didn't say what else do you need to make you get on a knee, but you read my letter out loud, and then you were dead silent. And when you were silent, that was so loud.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. And maybe if she could see him, she could see the gears turning. But yeah, the reserved, nonverbal nature that he has, particularly when, because I think he froze under the pressure. I think he does that. I think he just fight, flight, freeze, appease. I think he just froze because he's like, oh, because I think he was legit on the fence about them. He has held to that, and it did look like that. And I think when he got the letter, he had this, maybe some compulsion to like reciprocate kind of, but then he's like, oh, but that could be leading someone on. So what do I do? And he just shut down, and then that made her more, hello, what's happening? And he got defensive, and then she escalated, and so there was some very easy things he could have done to have helped the situation, even mildly. You could just be like, yeah, I'm really sorry, I'm on the fence, and I'm still very, he would kind of say those things, but not really, and then he would get defensive, and I think he might be doing that again. I think he might struggle with guilt. A lot of people can exhibit that under guilt, under worries of being blamed or making a mistake. They don't do anything. Like, when in doubt, don't do it. It's sort of like you're in a china shop and someone says, watch out, to you. And you're like, so you freeze, right? Because you figure, well, if I move, I might hit something and break it, right? Well, sometimes when someone is alerting you to something, to freeze is to actually cause the problem. It's not helping the problem, it's causing it.
Those are all of my commitments to you. Like, you are it for me, you are my person.
Yeah.
And you were dead silent. How would anybody react to that? That night that you...
They're editing it. Hopefully he apologized in that moment. It looked like he was thinking an apology, but they jumped to the next thing. Hopefully he would say, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. I guess I'm like that sometimes.
You told Chelsea that you loved her. I lost it. Oh my God, I cried more that night than I've probably cried my whole life.
I'm sorry I put you in that position.
Okay. That's in his limited way. That's good. She's being real healthy. From the beginning, aside from apparently with some drinks in her claiming that she's hot stuff and he's not going to be able to control himself around her. And she was saying that. Aside from that, she's been very healthy and very vulnerable and not being prideful or acting like a tough guy and saying, screw him, I'm over it, whatever, or something of that nature. She's being very self-disclosing, which is a very helpful thing to do, not only for her, because she can be authentic and real. It's a big part of health, is to be authentic, to be healthy and honest, at least with yourself. To be able to be comfortable doing that as well in the world, there's so many benefits. Carl Rogers and all the humanistic folks, they researched a lot of that and found that to be true, that being aligned with yourself and being authentic and real and experiencing other authenticity and other authentic people is very healing and helpful and regulating, which kind of makes sense because, the opposite is inauthentic. And to me, the way I interpret that is we evolved in an environment when we were born into a tribe and we lived with that tribe 200,000 years ago for our entire life. And you couldn't avoid but to be authentic with everyone because you literally saw them nearly 24/7. It's sort of like when you first meet people, you can put on airs or you can manage to edit certain things about your personality, but over time, like you move in with someone over time, it's just who you are will become known. Well, think about how it was back then. I mean, they didn't even have houses. They didn't have walls or clothes. So it's just, you can't hide, really. And it feels good to be able to do that without having to constantly edit everything that you are. And when you see authenticity in others, you can trust that what you see is what you get. It's all of the things that we can't know that is a constant in our lives about other people. We have no idea what other people are capable of. And that's why everyone's so paranoid about red flags and stuff, because we have a desire to know people through and through, and we know nothing about people. You can date someone for 2 years and barely really know their true self, right? They could be cheating on you the whole time. That's another thing. Back then, it would be hard to cheat because you're just on the African savannah. I don't even know if there were very many hills or mountains, right? There was probably brush and some trees, but that's about it. And so, you would see, oh, there's my wife having sex with somebody, you know what I mean? Or someone would see, right? Certainly couldn't be in a car in an alleyway like Jeremy and Sarah were. So authentic, and she's being very authentic, I think, seemingly, which shows a lot of comfort with herself and not being prideful, not trying to establish herself as better than others in that way, and leading the way. It's good.
That's not how I wanted you to feel.
Having said all that, if she continues drinking, I think she's going to try to get him. She talked about that before. It's not great, but I think it's to some extent understandable. Depends on what she does to try to get him. There's a good chance she's trying to get him right now, which again is understandable, even if it's subconscious, because she's in love with him. Butterflies, the whole thing. So, yeah.
I was crying reading that, and
I know. I accept your apology. I don't think you had any bad intentions. I think maybe that was the best you could do at the time.
it was hard.
Yeah, I'm reminded. It's interesting because since then he's been more fluid and verbal and flexible and communicative, but I'm reminded of just how shut down he was in the pods at times, and he's doing it again. Is it the guilt? I don't know.
Come to think about it, you never really did just flat out say how you felt about me.
I think you're the smartest person I've ever met. I think you're
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're really witty, you're really quick on your feet. We hit it off from day one.
Okay, given the context, there's a lot of tension right now, and I'm just wondering, where's Chelsea?
After you told me I'll be holding my breath when I see you.
I said you better have that EpiPen on you because your airways are going to close. Yeah, I was gassing myself way too much.
Well,
I was the one who was about to fall out and need a medic.
Okay, it's humble. It's nice. So, okay, yeah, that's good. I already talked about this whole thing, and it's not the worst thing that it's certainly something that will be held up as a high crime in society when someone is stuck up about their looks, right? So I'm not going to say it's a good thing, but it's, in my book, it's not a high crime, particularly if you're just basing it on how much effort you put into it and your experience with the response from others, And it's unbecoming to say that, say, well, like my wife, she is an objective 10. she gets paid for people to take pictures of her. That's how she made her living for decades. And, not only just face stuff, but, she was the red hair person on the box. When you go into the drugstore and they have all the different shades of hair color, she was one of those faces for many, many years. I have friends in Mexico that say that she's still there, and she's like, hey, where's my residuals? Not only, hair and face, but, body. She's a literal butt model, underwear model. There's there are catalogs and websites where it's just her butt. And I'm like, hey, it's your butt with underwear on it. So she's objectively attractive, right? We can understand that, but somehow, like, if you admit that, people can say that about you, but if you say that about yourself, like if Stacey, and she never has said anything like this at all, but if she walked around and said, like, yeah, I'm objectively hot and beautiful. I mean, maybe if she got some drinks in her, but I can't recall her ever saying anything like that. I don't even think she really thinks along those lines, but it would be very understandable. It'd be objective. She makes a living from being hot and beautiful and attractive and radiant and, all the things. Like if people at a party, and I don't know if this happens to her, but I think maybe she has said things, but I can imagine she's introducing herself and people, oh, what do you do? And if she were to say, oh, I'm a model, I'm a professional model, you might find people say, like, they'd be upset that you're trying, just because you're being truthful, because that's what she does, then people would say that you're being stuck up, you're being pompous, you're being a show-off or something. But it is what it is. That's the truth. I'm not claiming everyone would be attracted to her or think she was pretty, but certainly enough to justify putting her on the front of a magazine or in some sort of spread or down the catwalk. What do you call it? The causeway. That models walk up and down it. She did that too. Like, if I were to say, I'm a therapist or I'm a YouTuber, and people pay to be members of the YouTube channel or to be a patron on Patreon because they appreciate or want to hear me yammer into a microphone along with my co-hosts. That's objective. And if I said that, I guess some people would consider that pompous, but really, like, we have a particular kind of judgment to people that recognize that they're objectively good looking. And I don't really understand that, to me, because it's just a fact that some people are on average more attractive than others. If you gauge attractiveness by how many people would put them above average attractiveness, there's some people that it's not hard to imagine that person would probably get more votes compared to everyone else in this room as being the most attractive or close to the most attractive person in the room. You're going to find some variation. Some people might say, well, I'm kind of into this sort of thing, or I don't like that kind of look, or whatever. You're going to find some variation, but by the sheer fact that person gets paid to, to show their face, it's just like, and modeling is much more than that. It's about attitude, about working with the photographers. It's about showing up on time. It's about how clothes hang on you. It's about how chipper you are, how well you are at taking direction, and it's a lot of stuff. It's a craft. It's a skill. I have seen glimpses of it, and even if I was good looking as that and a model, I wouldn't be able to do it. I would get so impatient and upset. I'd be like, again? Can't we just take a couple of pictures and move on? And you have to be chipper, and you have to, even though you're kind of hungry and a little tired, you have to, you're running, you're modeling the running shoes, and you gotta run. They gotta take pictures, and you gotta have the face of someone that's enjoying something. Anyway, it wasn't like a high crime, but she is being humble in this moment. She's like, I was gassing myself up, and actually, you're the one that. And maybe she's just saying that, but I don't know if she is just saying that. Where is this headed?
What? Not him hugging me. I was so sure. I'd practiced how I was going to shake your hand. For real. I was going to try and keep it so cool and respectful, and you went in for a hug, and I was like, damn.
If you give someone a portion of what you gave to me, someone's going to be the luckiest man in the world.
If even a part of her is scheming to seduce him, this is a masterclass in how to do that, because she's not on paper coming across like she's doing it. If you look what she's doing on paper, she is being humble and supportive of Chelsea, and there's not an inkling of talking shit about Chelsea in the edit anyway. She is being humble, kind of apologizing, like, oh yeah, that was kind of dumb. I'm sure that I'm a dog to you, but you're the good looking one. Yeah. But I don't know. Even if he was having some inklings, I think his values I think we've seen, I haven't talked about this, but I think the values that he was taught or that he adheres to are when he commits to something, he's very committed to it. You know, you look at someone like Jeremy, who apparently wasn't taught that. I think what keeps him in the relationship with Chelsea, I think, has to do with, you know, some people are just like, well, I did make that commitment. So even if in this moment I feel like I want to run, I'm better than that, and I've been taught different than that. Some people might even think, under God, I will not disappoint. I made a commitment to God. You know, I don't know, but that kind of talk. So I doubt that he's just going to suddenly jump ship. Now, maybe there's a bit of a seed that's being planted. Excuse the pun.
I care about you a lot, and in reality, you were my number one still.
Wait, what? What are you saying, buddy?
In reality, you were my number one still.
In reality, you were my number one still. That was edited, so I wish they would just have a 2-shot and just let us take in the data and at least suspect that they're not screwing. You know, eventually they'll have AI and all that stuff, and we'll have no idea about anything. But right now, most things are not being affected that way. But when they edit it, it's God knows. But anyway, you are my number one still. What does he mean by that? What does he mean?
You know more about me than literally anyone else walking the planet. So right now, I just haven't gotten over like what it is. I'm sure I will again.
You terrify me.
Think what he was saying, you were my number one, was to tell her, well, there was a time in the pods when you were my number one, but then it changed. I don't know what he's saying.
Oh, I don't want you to be terrified. I want to be able to be around you and not, like, it still stings a little, but I'm happy for you guys. I really am.
We can really see a contrast of different people in her shoes. We see Sarah and what she did. We see Jess and what she did. We see, I guess, Trevor and what he did. It's a pretty interesting contrast because she's very redeemable in this moment, at least up until this point. We'll see how things go from here. But I will say, you know, I talked about authenticity and humility and being okay with your feelings and not succumbing to pride and being able to talk about things, express things. There's a myth that somehow if you entertain or let those feelings out, then you will act on them. But it can be the opposite, that when you try to suppress them, that's when actually you're more susceptible to doing them. That because she has already processed out loud to the camera, to Laura, to herself, to others, I still have feelings for him, and I get butterflies when I think about him. And then right now, when I saw you, it was like, oh my damn, like, whoa. She's allowing herself, she's recognizing it. And for many people, that actually gives the individual more power over those feelings. You know, this idea of just like, I don't like this feeling, let's get rid of it. We can understand that that isn't necessarily the right answer. It can cause that feeling to get worse or cause some other problem, you know? So maybe, because she's exhibiting a lot of balance and self-control, I guess, at least to some extent. Because I think, you know, like Jessica in season 1, right? She was pretty hammered, but she is going after Barnett, and she's like, you and I are made to be together. You know, Amber sucks. Or I don't know if she said Amber sucks, but, you know, you could see her sneaking in little things or fishing, right? Saying like he even dropped in that they had a big fight, and in the edit anyway, we didn't see her oh, you got in a fight. Tell me what happened, you know? Well, that doesn't sound very good. Do you feel very loved? And honestly, that would be good for him to have I would hope he would have someone draw him out so he could actually evaluate that. Not because he should be with Jess necessarily, but as I say that out loud, you know, I would hope he would have someone to talk to. But anyway, in the edit, there was none of that. It was, you know, very commendable. Okay, well, that's a good time to adjourn. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.